Well, Congress MP Shashi Tharoor has been summoned as an accused in the death of his wife Sunanda Pushkar. A Delhi court today took note of the police charge sheet which names Mr. Tharoor as an accused under the charge of abetment to suicide. The court said there's enough evidence to proceed against him. The former union minister has now been summoned to appear before the court on the 7th of July. Sunanda was found dead in a 5-star hotel in Delhi in 2014. Her last emails and messages on social media have been taken as a dying declaration by the police. Mr. Tharoor has also been accused of cruelty to his wife in the charge sheet that was submitted last month in court. He's called the charges preposterous, while the Congress says the charge sheet is politically motivated.
There is enough material at this stage to proceed against Tharoor. With those words, the Patiala House Court took note of the police charges of abetment of suicide against Congress MP Shashi Tharoor. The charge sheet accuses Tharoor of cruelty against his wife Sunanda, who was found dead in a hotel on January 17, 2014. Tharoor has been summoned to be present in court on the 7th of July. In a statement, Tharoor dismissed the charges as preposterous, saying, "I have fully cooperated with the investigation and will continue to vigorously contest these charges."
फाइनल चार्जशीट दाखिल किया गया है जिसका कॉग्निजेंस कोर्ट ने लिया है, तो ये दिल्ली पुलिस का जो प्रोफेशनल स्टेप है वो विंडिकेट हुआ है, स्टैंड विंडिकेटेड है.
The police have argued that Tharoor should be charged because they claim he knew Sunanda was slipping into depression but did nothing. That Sunanda's mails and messages on social media are being treated as her dying declaration. The police claim Tharoor ignored all attempts made by Sunanda to reach out to him, and that in an email to her husband on January 8, 2014, just days before she died, Sunanda said she had no desire to live. All I pray is death. But do the abetment of suicide charges hold up? That's the big question the court now has to decide. In a case that has seen dramatic twists and turns, from a murder probe, it has now come to suicide.
कोर्ट का जो महत्वपूर्ण जो ऑर्डर था वो ये था कि शशि थरूर के खिलाफ उन्होंने कॉग्निजेंस लिया और उन्हें एज ए एक्यूज कोर्ट में सम्मन किया है 7 तारीख के लिए.
कोर्ट ने माना है कि उनके खिलाफ पर्याप्त सबूत है.
हाँ, कोर्ट ने माना है. कोर्ट ने नोटिस तभी किया जब उसको माना कि इनके खिलाफ प्रिमा फेसी बहुत सारे सबूत हैं.
Did he know his wife was going to kill herself, yet he did nothing? Was she subject to his cruelty? Well, the police claim they have all the evidence against him. In New Delhi, Snigdha Basu, NDTV.
And joining us tonight on NDTV, here in the studio with us is journalist Nalini Singh, who was one of the last people to actually have a conversation with Sunanda in those very critical hours and days leading up to her death. Mr. Tom Vadikan, spokesperson of the Congress party, Sanjay Hegde, advocate of the Supreme Court, Monica Arora, also an advocate of the Supreme Court, with us this evening. Sanjay Hegde, to you first. It is now, of course, for the court to decide whether these abetment to suicide charges hold up or not. What has been particularly stunning in this case is how it has swung wildly from murder to poison to now abetment to suicide. What does this tell you about this investigation?
No, the investigation also starts with the high-pitched media campaign by some people saying that it was murder, there were Russians, there was polonium and whatnot. So the fact of the matter is that the woman died an early death. The Tharoor defense is that it was an accidental overdose. Unnatural death can be either accidental, it can be homicidal, it can be suicidal. Now, the homicidal premise is gone because the police say it is abetment to suicide. What the police charge sheet now seems to say is that the lady deliberately took her own life, and in the taking of her life, her husband pushed her into taking it. Now, if I was on the defense side, I would still argue that it was entirely accidental and that you have to prove the suicide. Without the suicide, there is no case. However, this is an investigation which nobody seems to be able to put a quietus to. Each time that somebody says that no, we don't think there is enough to proceed, there are always developments in court, there is a high-pitched campaign saying that no, how can you let this man get away? So I really suspect that somewhere The inarticulate major premise is let things play out in court so that the public is satisfied.
You think it's because of what, media pressure? Or that's part of it?
A media campaign sustained by political forces. That's how I'd put it.
Can I ask you though, as a lawyer, when you look at the law that covers abetment to suicide, now it says the term abetment covers instigation, conspiracy or aiding in some crime. It actually refers to instigating the person who has committed suicide.
Yes.
Now is that a very vague definition of what
No,
instigation is, or is it very specific? And what does instigation mean? Then that you actually literally hand somebody, let's say, a box of pills or a rope or whatever. What does it mean?
Where you incite somebody, where you say, go commit suicide, I will, that's the only way out for you, or something of that kind. So far the evidence which has come out in the media, or what the prosecutor read out, and I assume that was his best point, was an email which said, I don't want the tests, I just want death. That's roughly paraphrasing that email. So here was a woman who was unwell, who had to undergo certain tests, and she was sort of. So
you're saying the investigation doesn't necessarily, what we know so far doesn't point to an instigation.
Not point to any act of willful volition on Shashi Tharoor's part, which would have either instigated or aided Sunanda in her desire to commit suicide.
Nalini Singh, you're an important person in this investigation because you were among the last people to actually talk to Sunanda. When you have heard about this charge sheet, the fact that the court now says Shashi Tharoor does have to stand trial, what do you say to that? I mean, does it even surprise you?
Nidhi, no, because it doesn't surprise me, but just forgive me for my throat. But I would just say that it has to go somewhere. This you cannot have the death of a young woman in the prime of her life, an ambitious young woman. You can't expect that it will go, people will just say, oh, she died, too bad she died. This has to go somewhere. This is India, and we hope, and in fact we should laud the fact that it is now in the courts. It's going to play out in the courts, and from the lower court it will go to the Sessions Court, to the High Court, to the Supreme Court. As I see it, it's a 10 or 12-year journey, and that's how it is in our country. Never mind. But what I would say is that, abetment to suicide, we should be careful in the media that it doesn't become a witch hunt against Shashi Tharoor even, because
too late for that.
Well, we have to be, at least now we can be judicious, because we know that even if a name appears in a suicide note, even so it cannot be proved that it is abetment to suicide. If somebody says that my boss troubled me so much that I'm committing suicide, I think it still has to go through its process. So in this case, what I think is that Shashi was how she projected it to me, especially on that last phone call, which keeps coming back to me. You can see it haunts me 4 years, and I still know what she said. That she had already, suggested to herself that he had been neglectful, that he had been with a Pakistani journalist, and this had caused her humiliation, because she was really a very, very glamorous person with aspirations and the
But did you get
center
a
of
sense
everything.
that she felt that he was being cruel to her? To be very honest, I mean, this is hearsay, but this is your testimony since you spoke to her. Did she give you that sense that he was willfully neglecting her and being cruel?
It's Nidhi, I still cannot say that in all honesty, because I also know that Shashi Tharoor, there were a couple of instances when he was neglectful, is what she told me about. But I would say that many husbands seem to do that, but politician husbands seem to do that. Politician husbands leave them away, go away from the airport, and they are left fending for themselves, that kind of thing. Now that would have caused her feeling, loss of confidence, loss of self-worth. Hey, where is this guy who brought me to this past that I'm actually left with strangers? So all that. But I think there was an element of she had a very high, and why not? She had a very high opinion of her future, and she was very aspirational, and she also was very talented and knew it. Now, and she was the center of the world. You know, wherever she went, you could, you know, that
So,
how much.
okay, but
so I
as
think
you-
she felt
Yeah.
very humiliated, and that's all I would say. I cannot say that Shashi Tharoor sat there and said, "You are no good. Now you go and commit suicide." All that is not something which at least I'm going to lend my voice to.
Tom Vardakan, the Congress clearly feels that this is, I'll just come back to you, Sanjay, that you see this as clearly as a political witch hunt. Now, you know, it is something that will play out in the court. So you know, that cliche, the law will take its course.
Well, something more than that, especially with elections around and the kind of defeat they have faced, and what the Prime Minister said that he would, he was vengeful. He said that I would take revenge on the congressmen. Now the point is, and not just the
quite say
Congress,
that.
the opposition, he did say that, if you have a clipping of that, he did say that. Now there's an agenda for it. Lalu is in jail. They are hunting down Chidambaram. Now this is the turn of Tharoor. So if we as a party believe, if he belonged to some other party, he would not have faced this kind for murder charge with television channels hunting him down, and now it's suicide. And pray, what is the case? There is a mail which says she doesn't want to live. Have you inquired her state of mind? Have you inquired into her other parameters? She may not have committed suicide, but the point is, on the basis of a mail, you are going to say that it is the dying declaration, and there is no evidence. See, even the act under the IPC expects a positive role of the husband, in this case Mr. Tharoor, but here there is no evidence to establish it, and the police is trying to say it's a dying statement. There is too much of a mess up here, and we believe this is political vendetta first class.
Okay, before I come to Monica Arora, Sanjay has an intervention.
One small clarification.
Yeah.
He has been summoned in this case. It does not necessarily mean that there will be a trial, because the charges are yet to be framed. The court has to first satisfy itself on the basis of the charge sheet and the arguments that Tharoor or his lawyers may make as to whether a trial should proceed or not. We are not yet.
So right now they've just taken note of the charge sheet.
They've just taken note of the charge sheet. They've summoned Tharoor and they've asked him to make whatever statement.
Okay, Monica Arora, what do you think about the standing of this case and the credibility of the police probe?
Nidhi, if I can say that this is too far and too less. It's not about Shashi Tharoor as a person. It's about the faith of people in the Indian judicial system and the Indian criminal justice system. You see, the magistrate says that sufficient grounds are there existing to proceed against Shashi Tharoor on the grounds of number 1, cruelty to wife, section 498A, and abetment to suicide, that is section 306. But this was a murder probe. It started as a murder probe. FIR was filed under 302. And if you remember, the post-mortem clearly said that sudden and unnatural death had occurred. The SDM report said that she had died due to poisoning. The AIMS doctor said that he was pressurized to manipulate the autopsy report. Viscera showed poison. Former Delhi Police Commissioner said this was a case of murder. So from that point, we are coming to a point where the police says we don't have sufficient evidence against him. The magistrate says no, your charge sheet and documents which you have filed, I find sufficient grounds to proceed against him. So he has been summoned. Now his counsel will be provided with the copy of all these documents and charge sheet, and he'll be arguing his case. But what I say is, will Sunanda Pushkar ever get justice? Between suicide and the theory as a theory and murder, this case has been hanging. After 4 years, charge sheet is being filed. And if this is the case, in case of a former law officer, in fact a present law officer, he has been a minister, think of a common man on the street. What will happen to him?
Except we don't know
So
whether
it's all
it
about
was
faith
suicide.
of people in the criminal justice system.
The point is that we don't know if it was murder either. That's also been, that's also a theory that's been disproved and thrown out of the window, right?
We don't We don't know. Maybe Mr. Tharoor is absolutely innocent. But at least these inconsistencies in the police investigation should have been addressed. It seems to be a totally botched up investigation.
I think that's
They
fair
don't
to
know
say.
where
I
they're
don't think
heading
anyone
towards.
can disagree with that. Sanjay Hegde, no one can disagree with the way the police has handled this probe, which has been pretty bad. I mean,
Well,
which has been pretty
they-
badly handled.
The police, right from the beginning, probably did not think that there was a case. Continually, there was pressure from Dr. Swami saying that this was murder. There was speculation about this unnatural death. Let's first start with the premise that all can agree on. This was an untimely death.
No, I think I'll disagree with Mr. Hegde on that.
Do you think it was a timely death, Monica? Come on.
What point do you disagree on exactly?
Mr. Hegde, with all due respect to you, what I say is there were injury marks on her body. Secondly, there was poison found in her body. Then who was the person who pressurized the forensic experts of AIMS? Who were the persons who did not want this to be declared as unnatural death or a murder? Who wanted this to be declared as suicide? All those angles have to be probed. And I have seen Dr. Swami's petition also. It points out to more than 20-25 inconsistencies. Let the police also go further investigate on these points. I think those points carry weight.
Just let me respond. You ultimately have to decide whether Dr. Swami is the investigating agency or that we have a police out here whom we can trust. Now, the police have come to one particular
Mr.
theory.
Hegde, you and I as responsible citizens.
I have
as
not
Mr.
interrupted
Swami,
you.
we can
I have
always
not
point
interrupted
out
you. Please let me complete my point. Please let me complete my point.
I'm not interrupting. Please have
Okay.
your say. Please have your say.
Okay.
So, ultimately, the investigating agency in this country is the police. The police have now finally fixed their theory. Their theory is that the lady committed suicide and that Shashi Tharoor pushed her to it.
What happens
That by necessary implication means that they have given up murder.
Yeah, obviously. That's
so-
why it's
so
an abetment to
that's
suicide charge.
necessary.
But can I ask you that, you know, again we were discussing what the abetment to suicide law says. Now, again there seem to be inconsistencies with, you know, different cases. You had Kaliko Pul's suicide note, the former chief minister of Arunachal. Nothing happened with that, which had certain things it said in there. There was a proper suicide note. Do you remember the bureaucrat Mr. Bansal who killed himself? And there were a lot of things he said in his suicide note. Okay, haven't really seen any action being taken forward on that. So I'm asking very bluntly whether there are double standards
Nidhi,
in how
remember
these
Jessica Lal murder case.
yeah, let me ask both of you
The
this.
police
Both of you are
brought
lawyers, so I
up
want
the
to ask you both as
investigation.
lawyers whether, you know, whether this abetment to suicide
it was media
charge
who
is
brought up the inconsistencies in this case.
okay. Let me ask Mr. Hegde and you, both of you. I'm asking about this abetment to suicide. Is there a double standard in how it's handled?
There's a third case. An interior decorator of a TV channel committed suicide and blamed the anchor.
Well, the case,
That also has not been probed. Ultimately, in these abetment to suicide cases, one is that the investigating agency often looks at public perception and public pressure. Thereafter, in cases where they decide that they have to take it to court, they do the best with whatever they have. Now, here after 3 or 4 years of investigation, if the best that they can come up is an email which says, I don't want to live more, if they then want to draw an inference that that desire of the lady was solely actuated by an actual incitement by Dr. Tharoor, they have to prove that in court.
our social media post,
I
dying
believe there
declaration.
was much
Monica
wider
Arora,
conspiracy.
as a lawyer, I'm
If
asking
see
you.
the lady points out
Do you
that there-
do social media posts and emails constitute a
One
dying
point,
declaration?
The girl Sunanda Pushkar has stated that there were crimes in IPL which she had taken on her own shoulders. If you remember that statement also, that has not been probed. Maybe this is a wider conspiracy which needs probe.
Who's in charge of the
It's
police,
not about
ma'am?
one Shashi Tharoor. It's about whether
I-
there was a wider conspiracy or not.
Your
When
government
only
has been in
husband-wife
power for 4
relation,
years.
Matrimonial dispute as the police is making it out to be.
Your
Or
go-
was there any other conspiracy with financial implications? with much larger ramifications.
Also, Sanjay has a point. The whole
Who's in
ministry
charge?
controls the
Who's
Delhi
in charge
police.
of the investigation? Your government has been in charge for 4 years. Shashi Tharoor is
That's
no
what I
friend,
said.
and
It's a
your
total
police have watched up, is it?
From murder, they have come down to suicide.
Nalini
And they
Singh,
have not
is there
even touched
anything?
an IPL controversy.
Okay, is there anything at all from people? I mean, when one has over the years talked to a lot of people who knew Sunanda well, and described her last few days. Did anything ever indicate to you that she would take an extreme step like this? She was obviously very, very upset. But did you have any indication at all that it could lead to this? That she would take her own life, maybe?
Nidhi, I must say that I that I didn't know her that well that I could gauge that, or I could alert people. I could gauge that here was a person who was
Because you would
going
have
to.
then alerted somebody. If
Of
that's
course,
what
I
you
would have
said.
alerted that night, but that somebody who would go over the brink. I did not know her that well, but I must add just now that when she spoke to me, when she called me that night, about 10 past midnight, when she called me, I have said this many times, that she would be very clear for a few seconds, and then her speech would be slurred. Then she would be very clear, and she was very clear in what she actually wanted me to do. She wanted me to do something, and that was a technical thing, that she wanted me to retrieve some whatever. So what I'm saying
Somewhat messages.
So what I'm saying is, I've mentioned everything to the police. What I'm saying is that to me also, when finally when the conversation ended about 8 minutes later or something, is what the police tells me, I also said that, hey, listen, she's has she had has she eaten? I in fact asked her, have you eaten or not? Because I thought if she's had wine or something, now this is the wine talking. But then she would be so clear. So I think somebody first of all, somebody who knew her much better. Secondly, somebody who knows the medical condition of people in this, who are clear and then who slur and then who are clear and then but she was, on the whole, I would say she was pretty clear at that time. So it did not, many times I've thought about it, and I think it did not look to me as if it was a person who would shortly commit suicide. Maybe she would have done it in a little bit of time, but also make it just one little point.
None of us are psychiatrists or
Nidhi, just
experts
one
here.
small point. When Tom Borakan says that this is political, I just have one small question for them. How did the UPA feel when it was targeting the NDA ministers? When the UPA came to power, it also had the CBI investigate several prominent ministers of the NDA. So Tom must know that the shoe fits on both. Yeah, on both.
Tom, quick last response.
Well, the issue is before the public. They won the Trivandrum seat, and they're trying for it. And target is Tharoor. Let's face it. There is this media house. There are this media interests. Leave that apart. But the government is targeting a very articulate Congress leader. They're doing that to Chidambaram. They have done it to other leaders. But this is no way to win elections in a democratic process. You can't eliminate the opposition party. I'm sorry, this is a bad state of affairs, and this is going to lead to a state of affairs which I don't think can be controlled. New governments will come with new challenges and new questions will be asked. So this is not the last we are hearing about this.
Well, clearly, but one can only hope that now that the charge sheet has been taken note of,
I totally differ with you.
Well, I'm out of time, but I do hope that at least there can be more responsible reporting on this, because none of us here are to sit in judgment or be a jury or to announce who's guilty, who's not. We don't know that. So as they say famously, let the law take its own course and let's see where this goes. Thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. Thank you.